I said, and because coincidentally at the same time you told me, the game is almost ready.
Right.
I figured, well, maybe this is a good moment to do something like this, so that the people that are interested in finding out what's going to be going on with Sons of Heaven will have a better notion of it as of now. So I'm pretty much ready. I'll say for anybody who's watching, in case there's some, I'm guessing most of you guys are fans and have probably already heard of it, but in case you haven't, Sons of Heaven is the next RPG of mine that's going to come out from Mad Scribe Press. And it is a science fiction RPG, which I know is a bit different for me than typically people associate me with like history RPGs. But I have done a modern RPG, which is the Invisible College, and I've done a science fiction RPG that's called Star Adventurer, although that one was just a rule book. But it's from that rule book that I'm going to make, or that I have made actually, but that Chris is going to finish publishing, is a complete campaign setting plus rules all in one that has a specific style to it. And it is an OSR game, of course. If you know Star Adventure, you know that it's based on OSR rules. And so it's compatible with all other OSR products. And it is a game where what I didn't want it to be was just another Star Trek or Star Wars or something along those lines, right? So I wanted to have something that was a bit more unorthodox, but I also really, really wanted it to be really OSR, okay? Because there are a number of sci-fi games available of all kinds, whether OSR or not, and a lot of them are great. They're just fantastic science fiction games out there, from like all the way from Traveler onwards, right? Or even Metamorphosis Alpha, anything from there onwards. There have been great sci-fi games. But because my point of view on this is that you want to make sure that you have, if you're going to be using an OSR system, you want it to have that same style of kind of old school gaming that you would have in, say, a fantasy version.
Yeah.
One of the things that I wanted to do was to make the game have a number of ways that you could play it. It's an open sandbox, right? It's here are the different forces and powers in the galaxy, and you could decide as the DM how they would operate, and you can decide as the DM plus players what type of campaign you want to run. So there are many different kinds of campaigns you can run, and there's going to be some of them that are going to be more involved, let's say, in the kind of domain level politics of the thing. If you want to be part of like the effort to rebuild the human confederation, or you can do it as a very, very old school game where essentially you guys are either raiders or traders or mercenaries or planet hoppers that are going from place to place in the ruins of the human confederation, looking to get treasure, right, and to make money and to rediscover these planets that have now been cut off for hundreds of years.
Right.
So,
and if I can interject, that's actually one of my favorite aspects of the game. I think you've done such a good job putting this together in a way that is like an old school sandbox. It's a little. It reminds me a little bit of Star Frontiers, just as far as like the veneer of you've got this sci-fi, kind of a setting with a lot of fantasy elements. Yeah. And you do have different alien races, and there's the remnants of a, kind of a confederation and that sort of thing. But I really do like the aspect that you just lay everything out, and people can kind of pick and choose where they want to go. And there's plenty of essentially dungeons to explore because there's all these worlds that had collapsed and certainly lost all their government support and whatnot. But you may get to a world where everybody's completely dead, or maybe there's a world where the government's fallen and it's been taken over by a despot or whatever, and they live like a post-apocalyptic, kind of people. So, it's interesting, and I think you've got a lot of different things in the game. You've got alien robots, and there's even some Cthulhu-esque, kind of things over on one corner of the map. You've got all these different alien races that are playable too, that are very interesting. And I just, I really, I commend you for having put this together, because I got to tell you, when I looked at it, it was so much more involved than I thought at first. And,
yeah.
With Star Frontiers, I've only seen, not Star Frontiers. What was the one that you
Star Adventurer?
Star Adventurer.
That's a little book. It's just like 30 pages.
I only read a couple of pages out of that one, to be honest.
It's just the mechanics, right? It has no frills, right?
This is like it's way more involved than that. Yeah. And I quite like it, actually. I was telling my wife the other day I might end up running this, for some friends or something. So good job.
One of the things, everybody who buys my games at least knows that I love the concept of the clockmaker god being the DM, right? Not an interventionist director, right? And one of the best ways to do that is to facilitate people to do that is if you can make use of random generators. And so just like I did, for example, in Sword and Caravan, in the travel rules where the DM can just roll and just go with what rolls, and with very little input on his part, that just works, right? Or in Cults of Chaos, where you can create an enemy group in like 5 minutes and have a whole adventure set up. Here, what I did was that when you get to a planet or get to a star system, you as the DM, you could do it beforehand, right? But if you needed to, you could generate it in that moment, figure it out very quickly. You would know what it was like before the Confederation, and then you'd modify to see what it now has become, like how much it has degraded, what things have changed. And then you can go to such and such planet, in the system, and look around in the areas that there are these different places that you might discover there, these complexes or things that are maybe abandoned, or maybe they're still under the control of people who claim to be, the descendants of the original creators, or that are maybe now ruins, right? That you can go looking for treasure, and essentially those are like high-tech dungeons. We've got a couple of super chats here. $20 from Space Zeus. Thank you so much for that. He says, but are there Daleks? Joke for the Domino Fund. Well, there isn't Daleks, but actually in a one sense there is, because
more like Terminators,
Yeah, the premise of the present day of the setting is that it's 200 years after the 13th Machine War, which is when a artificial intelligence race developed in some part of the galaxy, and apparently this is the 13th one of these times that it's happened over the last couple of billion years. So it's a consistent problem, and like AIs are seen as very dangerous to all organic life, because sooner or later they try wanting to destroy everything. So one of these showed up in a little corner of the world that of the galaxy that was paying attention to, and by the time they were discovered, there was way too many of them to stop, and they started ravaging through the galaxy, killing every organic thing they could find, right? And those were the cause of the collapse of the Human Confederation, right? They wiped out the Human Confederation's home, because the Human Confederation was the closest to them. They were like right next door. They didn't realize it because it was an area of space they hadn't explored. But it was. It's
very much like Mechanoids, I think.
Yeah, Mechanoids is that would be an excellent example. All glory to Palladium Books for that one. And so like those guys are like kind of the Daleks. But the thing is that by the time you're actually playing, they were not defeated, but they were stopped by two of the originator races of the galaxy that are now like these super powerful, like they're Kirby-esque super villains, or not super villains, super beings, right? Where they can just wave a hand and create a gigantic force field that trapped all the remaining AI in one area, right? Or something like that. So those guys are not really the main villains. The villains are all the other kind of the raiders, the pirates among the humans, right? The renegades, the members of the religious order that lost their faith and have now become tyrants, and then the aliens that the humans had fought against for long periods of time, or who had opposed, or maybe some who had previously been allies, that are now like eating up human territory because because they don't have a coherent government, right? So that's kind of if you want to have like a villain of the story, that's what you've got there, is that it is the collapse of the Confederation and just all of these various threats and the need to rebuild somehow. Another super chat, this one from Agile Monk 6305. For a few years now, I've wanted to ask this question. What makes you two like to work together so much to produce TTRPG content? Do you want to go first on this one, Matt Scribe?
Well,
what is so wonderful about
it's probably the esoteric demonic pact that we have. No, no. I don't know. It's interesting. It was a weird series of events, and I don't know really how. I don't know if I've ever really talked about this, so I don't know how to express it, but essentially, there was a time when I was a extreme leftist, and I was very happy being a stupid leftist, and then I voted for Trump, and all hell broke loose, and I lost a bunch of friends. All my gaming friends, my entire gaming group that I'd been with for 25 years or something. And I felt like an outcast, and I didn't play much. The game store that I used to go to was quite liberal and all that. And so, and then COVID happened and all that too. Right. And so I ended up just kind of becoming a recluse, for a while. And I watched a lot of YouTube videos, and Pundit's videos were one of the few channels that I kind of noticed and started watching, and I said, I kind of like this guy, and I just was a fan of the show, and I don't remember how we first ended up interacting on the internet, but it was kind of I think I'd started promoting my own game that I had produced a game much earlier, but was still kind of periodically promoting that online. And I know what it was. I sent you a review copy. Yeah, and I didn't think you would actually.
If I'm not mistaken, the first real interaction was you had wanted to send me a review copy of Encore, which incredibly arrived. Yes,
but
I don't remember.
I really didn't
shell for that or how you got it here. But you got it.
I really didn't think you were going to even bother, because I was a virtual nobody. And you did it.
Look, can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Sure.
If anybody has an RPG that they are published and commercially for sale, right? Like if you got on Drive-Thru or on Amazon or whatever, right? I don't review some a bunch of notes someone has just written on paper or something like that, or free RPGs, because otherwise it would be too much of a burden at this point for how many people want me to review their books, right? But if you've published a book, whether or not it's famous, right? If you want to send it to me, if it's an RPG book, obviously, I'm not talking about other subjects, though some other subjects might be interesting, who knows? Then I will review it, right? I can't guarantee that I'll give it a good review. I can't say whether I'll be nice or not, but I will review it. And that is publicity. And publicity is the most important thing in this business. So
for me, it was great because, again, you're somebody that I enjoyed watching, and I thought it was a pretty great deal to had my game on your show. So that was great. I remember you not liking a whole lot of things, but that's all right. But you did the review, and then you contacted me afterwards, and you were like, "Hey, listen, I'm really impressed with the art and the layout and everything like that." You were looking for somebody to publish one of your books, and you asked if I would do it, and I had never done that before except for my own book. And to be honest, I was self-taught. I had to teach myself how to use Adobe InDesign with no college, and so I kind of stumbled through it, and I thought, well, man, I don't know if I'm good enough to make a book for Pundit, but I really had to step up my game, and I watched a lot of tutorials, and I practiced a lot, and I made oh God, what was that first game we did? Was it Sword and Caravan, or was it
Sword and Caravan, I believe? Yeah.
I really liked that setting. I've always been fascinated with the Silk Road and that kind of thing, and so just one thing led to another, and you were like, "Hey, you want to do the next one?" and the next one, and I was like, "Okay, sure." And we've just we've done pretty well. Yeah, we've done pretty well together.
I have an ongoing campaign of Sword and Caravan. It's been going on for years now, and it's just fantastic, right? Like there's so much you can do in this setting. It covers the entire Silk Road in the 1190s to the 1220s. So it's like from the Third Crusade, that's Richard the Lionheart, all the way to Genghis Khan, and when he wipes out everyone. And it's got details on every single major city in the Silk Road in that period. The customs, the rules, there's classes, there's everything in there, and it is a complete open sandbox sort of system. There are rules about traveling along the road, about encounters you can have, about what cities are like. All of these. That's another great sandbox game for sure. Yeah. I mean, all your games are kind of like that anyway. Yes,
which is I'm an old school player too, so I for many years we like I said, we even before the gaming group that I had that broke up and after Trump, way back in the early 80s, 82 through probably 89, I had a gaming group that consisted of about 12 people, and every game we did was a sandbox essentially, and we did a lot of old school first edition AD&D, and it just brings back a lot of memories for me. I kind of like that style. But I really enjoyed making those books with you, and I've gotten better each time I've done something. Sometimes I cringe at some of the layout or pictures that I see from some of the other earlier books, and then you look at I think the best one we did was Baptism of Fire.
Yeah.
What was that?
It's been a constant process of improvement, right? Like, I mean, you look at my earliest books, like
I bought
Heralds of Indra that was done by Bedrock Press, which is a very fine.
And I'm impressed with some of the artistic elements in that one too. Particularly because I used to live in India, so I picked up that game. But I think Baptism of Fire was probably our best. I think that. Well, I don't know. I mean, because the Viking one, I really like that one too. So I don't know.
Are you saying was it our best
the
sense of our bestseller, or in the sense of
no, just as like my personal favorite, the way it looks, and I was very happy with the layout, and I was very happy with the artwork, and because that stuff doesn't always turn out the way you want, and sometimes you have to make compromises, and then like I said, sometimes it's the best I can do at that time, and then I learn something different. So we'll see. I think with Sons of Heaven, again, I've noticed a shift where I've kind of had to step up, because I'm like, well, I got to make it better than the last one,
Yeah.
And how do I do that? And so I've been watching a lot of videos on design and a lot of looking at a lot of other people's games, right? You know, how are they doing the layout? What kind of page elements do they have in there that I've not done before? And so I'm trying to mess around with some new stuff.
So like one of the reasons to now give my answer here, I was real, like I said, just as Chris said, I was really impressed with Anchor. I mean, not so much as a system, because I'm an OSR guy, right? But
D12, damn it.
The art and the layout was incredibly good for someone I had basically not heard of up to that time, right? And I thought, oh, well, you know, when I was looking, because after the Invisible College, I was looking for a new publisher, because the Invisible College was published by a guy who likes occult stuff, right? And so that was the only thing that he was going to do for me. That's fine, right? So I was looking for a different publisher. I could have gone back to some of my old publishers like Spectre Press or maybe Presses or whatever, but I was so impressed that when I started working on Sword and Caravan, I had decided to, and I never usually do this. I went to a publisher, that is to say, Chris, and suggested that he should pitch for, you know, doing this book, because I could see that he was going to be, it was going to, whatever he made was going to be a really beautiful book, right? And has been, and each one of his books has been tremendously impressive. All the ones he's published with me, and I'm specifically interested, or I was specifically interested in Sons of Heaven being done by Chris, because Anchor is a game that is sci-fi, but it is this kind of retro futurist sci-fi, because it's like ancient Mesopotamians in space, right? And that is exactly the kind of style that I wanted for Sons of Heaven. I didn't have a clear vision of all of how the artistic look of it was going to be, but I figured that Chris would probably be able to figure that out, or to help me figure it out collectively, the two of us, in a way that would be much better than any other publisher I could imagine, because he'd kind of done it before, right? So,
well, and you know, the weird thing about it is, you would think that it because I had already done a game similar in style to that, that it would come easy. But the part that, you know, the thing that gets me is like, I try to make it different, because I don't want it to look like my game.
I made it hard for you, because I was very explicit to say, this can't look like Star Trek and it can't look like Star Wars. It can have a little bit of each of those, maybe, but it's got.
And I think you threw in, it can't look like Buck Rogers, or and it can't. It was like, it can't Battlestar Galactica, and I was like, well, it doesn't leave anything, you know.
Well, then we started talking about like the 70s and 80s Euro sci-fi comics, right? And I thought that was kind of a good element to put in there. And then, of course, there was that retro futurism of you know, Sons of Heaven. You could call it Bible stories in space, right?
but then the first draft of, like, I sent you a bunch of images, you know, I was like, what do you think of this? You know, is this style okay, or what do you think? You know, and it was a little too 70s. It looked very much, you know, like a 70s sci-fi novel cover or poster from, you know, Frazetta or something, but it was a little too dated, and I know you didn't want that. You were like, well, if anything, it's more 80s or 90s, or, you know. So I was like, okay, well, so I had to scrap everything I was working on and kind of redo it, and it for the longest time it had me stumped, you know, because again, I have my own ambition. I still have my own ambitions of coming out with some more books for Encore, and, you know, sometime down the pipe here. But I didn't want to use the stuff that I had kind of planned for my stuff for your book. And so,
but eventually, the incredible thing is, like, you're right that there was a long period where it just wasn't working.
Yeah.
And then suddenly it started to work.
Then it just kind of snapped. and I don't know really what that was. I think, I think what it was is I started thinking, I was reading through the material and I was trying to think of like, well, let me get my head into the game in the sense of, well, what kind of character would I like to play? Or if I was going to run a game, what would I do with this? And the first thing that kind of struck me was like something akin to Firefly or Defiance. I don't know if you've ever seen either of those shows, but
I saw Firefly. Yeah.
But Defiance, I think, is a really good example. It even has some of the same alien races in there, although they're fairly generic, in that sense. But I started looking.
I never watched it, so
yeah. Well, I started looking at that, at that show, and then thinking, okay, well, what's the aesthetic for this? What's the look? It's a little post-apocalyptic. It's a grittier sci-fi, and there is, depending on where you go, I mean, it can be quite futuristic and high tech, and there's other places where it's essentially Mad Max, So, but I was really thinking about those two shows in particular, and I thought, all right, well, there's a definite style that kind of goes along with those shows. And so I started looking for art that was kind of along in that vein, and I think it works. I'm very happy with most of the art that I have right now. I'm still trying to take some of the early artwork and redo it. Uh-huh. We are using AI for most of the artwork again, but those platforms have changed in the last 6 months.
Incredible! It's incredible how quickly they're improving.
So, I was using Midjourney 6, and now they're on Midjourney 8.1, and so the difference is just stellar. And then, I use ChatGPT some for some of the stuff. Actually, it's interesting because ChatGPT is way better than Midjourney. Usually, if I give both of them the same prompt
for art, you mean
for art?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I don't want anybody to misconstrue. We every word in this book is something Pundit wrote, and we don't, other than using spell check. There's no other AI that's involved in that.
The text is zero AI in this book. Yeah. I'll tell you that much.
And that's the same with all. I mean, we've never done that with any of the books, but the artwork.
I know that I could probably learn about using AI for certain things in terms of writing. But I just
no, you don't want
I
to.
Just don't, because no. I can't help myself.
Yeah, it's not worth. When you start getting people, the accusations on that end would just be, you'd be no better than a WotC at that point, I guess, where they just pump out complete AI books.
That sort of thing is terrible, right? But I know I've heard people saying that, it's good for editing, it's good for spell checking and stuff like that. But I use Open Office, and that's that.
Yeah, I mean, I use it to spell check, but I have to read the entire book over and over and over. I'm looking for, is sentence structure okay? Is this a little too wordy? That's I've said this before, but it's not a real jab. It's just Pundit can be quite wordy when he writes something. So
I write like an academic.
He'll have a paragraph this big.
Every book I've written, whether it's stuff like Baptism of Fire, historical RPGs, or it's just pure fantasy.
It's like High Gygaxian.
I'm a historian, so all of them are history books in some sense.
But sometimes you'll find a run-on sentence that's half the page. But other than that, there's really no problems. I have to sometimes put in punctuation and break up the sentences a bit to make it flow better. But yeah, so I'm still, I'm using AI to do the bulk of the images, and literally, because I've been working on this about 6 months, literally within 6 months, the artwork has gotten so much better that now it makes the early artwork look like shit. So, I'm like, well, I can't put these two together on the same page or something. They're going to look terrible. So I'm having to redo some of it, But
but it is the art. All the art that you've been sending me lately, anyways, has been really amazing. And I think, if I remember correctly, this is at least my recollection of the process, right? Is that the place where we started kind of syncing up was when you point out all the different alien races, and we started looking at how they should look like, right? And then after that, it was like spaceships, and then after that, I think everything kind of flowed out of those two
right.
parts.
And to be honest, I'm still a little stumped on some of the spaceships, but we'll get it done. Yeah. But the problem is I don't want all the spaceships to look the same.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I tried to make the point that each of the different cultures have spaceships that look a bit different from each other.
It's extremely hard, though. One thing that AI does not do well is variety within the same theme. So, you can ask it to make a particular style of spaceship, or give it the prompts that I use are like a paragraph long. Do you want to really do it right? And so the first one it'll make is amazing, and then you'll say, okay, well, this same culture has a transport vessel as well, and a smaller starfighter, and I want to use those same kind of design elements.
Yeah, it has to look similar
into these other ships, right? And then it has no idea what it just makes something completely off the wall, and it's completely different than what you want. Or you may get those three ships, and then, okay, well, now I've got this other alien race that's completely different, and I prompt it completely differently than the other ship, and now all three of those ships look exactly the same as the other culture, and I'm just like, what are you doing, But to be honest, I mean, even if I was using a physical artist, I've had this problem in the past where I'll tell them, I'll give them prompts like, do this and this and this and this, and I want the ship to be this color and to look, this shape, and it has to have this element, and you get something back that's completely not what you asked for. I mean, but now you've paid $500 for that one.
Yeah, that's the difference.
So either way, it can be rough, and I'm just, the art direction sometimes is a little harder than you would think. You'd think, oh, well, you just tell it to do something, or but it's not that simple. You really have, prompting.
When you were doing when you were sending me some early samples, I remember that there was a long period of time where each one I said, well, this isn't quite correct, or this isn't like this, or and like for the last several months now, everything you've sent me, I've said, oh yeah, that's perfect. So obviously we're on the right track. Yeah.
Either that, or I just thought you were getting tired of me.
But, no. I believe me. If I saw something, I said, no, that's not quite right.
Yeah.
I would tell you.
So it's then again, the prompting. I have to watch. You can watch a lot of tutorial videos on how to do this correctly, and you can talk to ChatGPT, and it'll give you, clues on how to prompt things. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll chat with ChatGPT for half an hour and discuss how to prompt effectively for this mid-journey picture that I'm trying to make. And then it'll give me a prompt, and then I'll send it to mid-journey. And sometimes it works really well, sometimes it doesn't. And then sometimes I can throw that same prompt into ChatGPT, and it makes a much better picture. ChatGPT is interesting because ChatGPT likes you to chat with it, right?
Mhm.
And it, with Midjourney, you type in, I want A, B, and C to equal this, to equal D, and then it's very binary, and you just type it in and you send it. But with ChatGPT, you have to discuss, like, well, I'm making this book and this is the type of setting, and I'm really wanting this particular character class to evoke this kind of a theme, and how do I get there? And then GPT will say, I think I have an idea. We could do this, this, and this, and this. And you say, okay, well, let's elaborate on that. And then you go back and forth for an hour, and then you get a prompt, and then you tell it to go ahead and do that. And then now you've got this really stellar looking picture. But you can only make 3 pictures a day. So unless you pay, well, for a business version of it would be like $100 a month. And so I'm not going to do that right now.
Yeah, for sure.
I've been thinking about it though, because GPT will actually make, like, the difference in quality is so much better. Sometimes with, like, Midjourney yesterday, I had to prompt, I put in 100, it was like 100 and something, 103 or 4 different prompts. And, it takes me 15 minutes or something to make a prompt. So, I mean, literally all day. I mean, like, I spent like 12 hours yesterday trying to get one image. And I finally got it, and it didn't look all that great. And, when I finished it, and then I took it and put it in Photoshop, and I had to fix everything that was wrong with it. And, I don't have one of those, I don't know what they call it, but like the screens where you can actually use a stylus to draw on it. I've just got a desktop computer and a mouse. And so I'm taking a mouse and trying to draw shit in there. And
oh, geez.
it's yeah. I mean, now I was an art major in college. I switched to history later, but early on I was an art major. But that was before computers existed. So, it's a whole different it's a learning curve with that. But you put it in Photoshop for a while and mess around with it, and you take it out. And I looked at it, and then the 24 hours had went by, had expired. So I was able to then get ChatGPT to make some more pictures. And I put the same prompt into ChatGPT, and I put the two together, and I was like, this one is like 50 times better than that first one,
Crazy.
And it's just, so you can spend 12 hours on something, and then the other one does it in 3 minutes. It's just.
Huh. So we got a question here. Well, I think actually there's a question for me and a question for you, but yours, I think you've just been talking about it, because he said, for Chris, how does your approach to the art change? And I think we were just talking about that. And for me, he says, whereas fantasy tends to be dungeon-centric, how's your approach to sci-fi different? Well, like I said, in Sons of Heaven, you could run a game that is like very kind of old school, where your characters are going to these ruined planets and trying to loot the remains of super high tech from the old Confederation and stuff like that, stuff that's valuable that you can then travel around and trade or use for yourself or whatever. And there are these complexes, some of which might be now populated with dangerous things that are essentially kind of like dungeons. But beyond that, there's also, there's the opportunity to go and engage in trade. There are rules about how to trade in the game. You could be part of the movement to try to restore civilization. That there is one part of the former Confederation that is now starting to coalesce together into a new polity that has a chance to fight back against the different perils that are threatening the Confederation. There's also a very strong kind of religious element in Sons of Heaven, which is that the humans have a religion that is essentially a cargo cult based on a very tiny number of texts from old Earth that is now lost, right? No one knows even where it is in the context of the human race. And those texts are now looked at as foundational civilizational texts. Mm-hmm. And from that, they developed or reinvented a monotheistic religious concept that was combined with the fact that in the game, travel through hyperspace requires navigators that have psychic abilities, right? And so the humans, when they entered into contact with alien beings, was when they were conquered by one of these alien races and basically taken as slaves, because this race has no psychics, right? And so they had to conquer other races that had psychic potential, and then enhance that psychic potential on certain humans that had the right genetic traits, and they became hyperspace navigators. But in the process of traveling through hyperspace, you end up having these kind of mystical experiences, and they translated that into a religion where they venerate the Lord of Heaven. After the humans liberated themselves and founded the Confederation, the people who had those traits that were now inheritable to certain degrees ended up becoming kind of the religious order, So you could also be working with those groups called the sages that are trying also to maintain the light of civilization. And it's an interesting sci-fi setting because that religious faith is one of the core things that keeps human culture together, right? And so you could be looking at it from that point of view. Also, you could be working for the sages, or you could just be pirates, if you really want to be. So like there's all kinds of things you can do in the setting, right?
Yeah, it's a very playable game. I mean, it's there's so much potential there.
Many different campaigns, right? Campaigns that are not going to be similar to each other. Let me see here if we've got. I thought we had some other questions. Samukira says, "I love the high Punditian writing." That's great.
Yes.